Hello, I'm the Pink Phantom, and this is my podcast. Join me as I delve into the world of games and gaming, and especially old school RPGs. Together, let's voyage into the astral realm and check out my Phantom thoughts. In this episode, I talk about classes in AD&D and old school games. Go back to playing on the Foundations, a world-building game by Tom Anna. And then, of course, there's more from the world of the Tales of the Dragon Slayers. I just want to talk briefly about classes in D&D. The original D&D started off with 3 classes: the fighter or fighting man, the cleric, and the magic user, and then they added in the thief later on. But since then, it seems like the number of classes has grown. In the box sets, Basic Expert and Pick Me, you added races class, so halflings and dwarves and elves were their own class. And in AD&D, you started having kind of a proliferation of classes. You added things like the monk and the bard, and there were subclasses that were introduced: druid, cleric, and assassin. Actually, I think assassin was its own class in AD&D. And ranger and barbarian from fighter and paladin from fighter initially, before they switched that to the cavalier and unearthed arcana. And then later on, all of those became their own separate classes. And I've just looked at it over the years and how things have grown out. And it makes me wonder, what is a class supposed to be anymore? Because it's become so many of them now that, since these are all individual classes, in order to have subclasses to allow for some differentiation among people of the same class, characters of the same class, that the subclasses start trending onto just glomming on to abilities that other classes already have. So if you have that, I've talked about the idea before on the podcast and heard others talk about the idea of niche protection or niche protection, however you say that word, and how so that each specific class type kind of has its own role, and then have the subclasses be a way to differentiate a little bit, or to have, in older school versions of the game, to have magic items and such that you acquire to help differentiate and give you a little different abilities, a little more flexibility, or a little more concentration or specialization, but still largely staying within that niche. And you look at, whether you look at specifically as kind of what their specialty is, where with the 4 original classes, you had the fighter was combat and using weapons and armor, the arcane magic for the magic user, divine magic, including a lot of healing and buffs and debuffs for the cleric, and then skills and stealth for the thief. Or if you went the route that a lot of RPGs, digital RPGs, computer RPGs have gone, especially the online RPGs have gone, like World of Warcraft, where it's more of a specialty of a role, where you have tanks and damage dealers and buffs and debuffs and crowd control and things like that, and that's how you differentiate characters, and that helps define somewhat in classes, but there's other things that add into that. And you just wonder, how far can you spread things out before you get a certain sameness, either within each class or within characters as a whole, where you can start with a class, but you go to a certain subclass, and you take certain specialties, you take certain feats, and you end up with the abilities of another class. Or, the way multi-classing is done now, where you just sample another class. You take a level in a class and get those abilities as well. So it seems like the idea of class has been somewhat diluted as RPGs, D&D in particular, but as RPGs in general have evolved. And when I look at the 5th edition of the game, it seems like there are some definite classes in there, but it would make some of the classes into subclasses of those, I guess, call them true classes, though that's probably not the correct word for what I'm looking for. Where the sorcerer and the artificer are really just another version of the wizard, if you consider the wizard kind of like the magic user, the old magic user class, where the cleric and druid are really kind of, and maybe even the paladin are kind of specialist versions, subclass versions of the warlock. And then you have the monk and the barbarian and the ranger and possibly the paladin, again, depending on how you slot the paladin, being subclasses of the fighter, and then the bard being a subclass of a rogue, basically an arcane rogue. In a lot of ways, that's just a rogue mixed with a wizard, with kind of a touch of a cleric as well, because with their ability to give advantage to other characters, they have that kind of buff debuff ability as well. So, is there a limit in how many classes you can have in a game, and have the class distinctions even mean anything? If you're going to have a game with classes, should they mean something? Should there be some hard limits, some barriers, some walls between the classes that just aren't crossed? Unless, again, you get some kind of magic item or get some sort of boon from a deity level creature, a wish spell, something like that that could break those barriers. But otherwise, you're going to have certain roles for certain character types all the time. And is it even necessary? Is niche protection something that's just overblown in old school gaming? Love to hear your thoughts on this. Getting back into Foundations, a solo world building game by Tom Anna that I started with last time. I had left off, I'd drawn the card that was the Eight of Hearts, that was telling me to create animals domesticated by early peoples and create a culture of nomads who live and move alongside their herds. And I wanted to do that off mic, essentially, because me silently pondering and scribbling is not, good podcasting. So here's what I came up with, just a couple little short ideas. The Chigari are giant centipede-like creatures. The largest of them allow teepee-like homes on their backs. So this would be something that would, traveling beasts, something akin to having domesticated horses or elephants or something like that. And then the Homlar, six-legged cattle-like creatures with segmented bodies. Each section is the size of elephants. They have minor armor plates. They exude a nutrient-rich slime that kind of trails off from what I'm seeing is like long yak hair that goes all the way down to the ground. And they are sources of meat and milk. I put that in quotation marks because it may not be exactly milk. It may be some other kind of nutrient-rich solution. And the slime makes plants grow. And the people are the Suvaria, who they ride the Chigari to keep up with the Homlar herds, and they plant seeds of grains, fruits, and vegetables in the wake of the herds. So they're able to function as nomads and hunter-gatherers, but they're also getting some of the benefits that you would get from agriculture settling in a place, because the nutrients coming from the Homlar help enrich the soil and help those crops grow. So they're kind of managing the crops that they're hunting and gathering, or they're gathering. Hunting is something different, obviously. And then settled areas will trade with them, and especially to migrate through their fields or for collections of slime and meat. So that's what I came up with for that. So we'll go to the next card here. This is the Birth of Mountains. Great forces emerge from beneath the lands, pushing into the skies above. Draw 3 vast mountain ranges across your world. So I've added some mountain ranges to the map. I guess I should probably try to describe this thing. It actually kind of looks like an animal facing to the left. It's got 2 sections that look like thick legs extending down, the front leg coming to kind of a point. I actually put one of the mountain ranges there. And then there's a section that protrudes kind of like a snout off to the west or to the left side. And then north of that, there's what looks kind of like a head with It looks like a funky hairstyle with a couple of lobes, one sticking up, one sticking out to the left, and one sticking way back to the right. That could be like a horn or some kind of a skull area, I guess. And where the areas I had drawn some rivers coming from some of like where the neck area would be and the area of the body between the two legs. And I added some mountain ranges there because those would seem like two parts that were coming together. And so the tectonics would force them up. So the next card is Beneath the Seas, create an aquatic or amphibian species that live in or near a body of water. There's a lot of large kind of bays to choose from around the place here. So I'm going to plant that aquatic race, and then I will probably save that for next time because this is running up a few minutes, and I don't want to make these extra long segments, especially with so much of it being map drawing and writing in the chronicle and creating things like that that take a little more time than you want to have doing a quote unquote live podcast. So until next time, hope you enjoyed it. And now, more from my solo AD&D RPG campaign, Tales of the Dragon Slayers. All right, we are on to day 119, and following the migrations of the humanoid races. The only group we have that's still on the move that hasn't found a home or been killed are the Iron Basher hobgoblins. Now, they have explored the areas both to the east and to the north of the hex they're currently in. I'm sorry, to the west and to the north. So they basically have sort of to the south and to the east that they can go. So they will not be proceeding in a completely random direction. They'll be proceeding in really to the east or to the southeast, basically. So 1, 2, or 3, or 4, 5, or 6. And on a 1, they go to the east. This was an area that was passed through by a previous humanoid race. There won't be a check for terrain, but we will check for encounters and inhabitation just to see if they run across something that previous group did not. And we'll also roll to see if this is where their tribe has kind of settled in. And that's a 25% chance of them being located in Lair. 61% they do not. So is there any inhabitation they run across? With a 78%, there's nothing. So let's run a encounter check. Nope, they do not run into any encounter here. And then we'll go on to another hex, and we'll see if they have the other two encounters in that hex. So again, we'll go to a 1, 2, 3 for east, a 4, 5, 6 for southeast, and they roll a 1 again, so they go east again. Do they find their tribe here? 50, so they do not. Inhabitation. No inhabitation. This is a previously explored hex, so we know what the terrain is. It's hills with a lake in it. So now let's do the other two encounters. And they do have an encounter at night. So looking at the random encounter charts, I roll a 38% or an 11 if we use it with the Monster Manual 2 chart. So a 38% is going to give us wild horses, or on the Monster Manual 2 chart, an 11 will give us orcs. Both of those could be kind of interesting. Let's see, I'll roll the percentile dice again. I'll use the 1s die for horses and the 10s die for orcs. And with an 80 versus a 7, we're going to go with the orcs. All right, let me grab a little scratch piece of paper here. And let's roll up this orc encounter. 30 to 300, so that's going to be D10s. So we'll roll 10 D10s and then multiply the result by 3. So we've got a 10 and a 4. I've got a 1 and a 3. I've got a 6 and a 4. I've got a 4 and a 5. And I've got a 10 and a 2. So adding that up, we got 14, 18, 24, 33, and 49 times 3. 7, carry the 2. 147 orcs. Plus, of course, they'll have, well, actually, they will not have a sub-chief because they don't have 150. Let's see if they're in their lair. Let's see if that will grant them some extra orcs if they're in their lair. It's a 35% chance. They roll 86%. So now this is just a roving band of orcs. There's a 20% chance that they are bringing some carts. So that would have extra guards if they have that. And with a 4%, they are. They're bringing back some kind of, they're coming back from some kind of a raid. So that will double the number of leaders and assistants from a leader and 3 assistants for every 30 orcs to 2 leaders and 6 assistants for every 30 orcs. Plus, they will have 10 orcs for every cart. And that means they automatically have the sub-chief and guards. So we have, let's see how many carts. We have 2 carts. So another 20 orcs. So that's 169 orcs. And then a sub-chief. And then 5 to 30 guards. So 1d6 times 5, 10 guards. So that is what they have run into here. So let's do a reaction roll. But first, let's check the humanoid preferences table. Hobgoblins tolerate orcs, but they will bully and harass them. Orcs have neutral negative feelings for the hobgoblins. So there will be no modification to the reaction for the orcs roll. There will be a minus 5% reaction for the hobgoblins roll. So let's roll them bones. The reaction of the orcs to the hobgoblins is 58% uncertain, but 55% prone towards positive. So let's see what the initial hobgoblin reaction is. The initial hobgoblin reaction is 84% minus 5 is 79%, which is friendly immediate action. So now the orcs will roll to see within that 55%, are they friendly reaction? And with a 46%, they are. So it's a friendly reaction-ish, for humanoids. So this means that the hobgoblins are befriending the orcs probably with the idea of essentially subjugating them later. And so they offer to escort them home with the treasure. And the idea being that they tell them their lair is nearby, which they suspect, but they don't know because they haven't located where their other group of their tribe has settled down. They suspect it's in the area, and they'll escort them where they go. Now, this does raise the question, is there the potential for this group of orcs to be the part of the Oinking Horde, part of the group that was with the hobgoblins before, and that might explain why they were why the hobgoblins had such a positive reaction to them, because they may have recognized some sort of banner. But on the flip side of that, we've already had 2 groups of Oinking Hordes, the previous group that the hobgoblins had encountered, plus their lair group, which add up to well over 200 orcs. So this would put the total orcs well north of the 300 maximum that you run into. But that's not to say that any orc group couldn't be bigger than that. They could always have groups out raiding. So let's say, given their location, which is decently far to the east from where the previous Oinking Horde had linked up with the gnolls and the hobgoblins at the 5th keep, the river keep, it'll be kind of a low chance. Let's give it a 25% chance. And with an 8%, they are part of the Oinking Horde. So the Oinking Horde is a horde. So their numbers are swelling, adding this group to the previous groups including all the specialty troops like chief and sub-chiefs and guards and such, they're probably going to be close to 500 orcs. So we will make a note of that. And now let's go ahead and do day 120 and see if the hobgoblins get these orcs home, because if they don't, the orcs may start being suspicious. All right, so they are going to set out. They're going to be going basically south and southeast because they moved east and didn't find their lair group. So let's see which direction they go. 1, 2, 3 southeast, 1, 4, 5, 6 southwest. 6, they move southwest. This is a previously explored hex, so we know what the terrain is. Let's see if they run into any habitation. They do not. Let's see if they find their lair here. And they do. So in another hex with hills and a lake in it, they have found their lair. And it's interesting because this is also the hex where some werewolves were encountered by a previous grouping. And so now we need to roll 4 encounters because they're going to settle down here. So 3 encounter rolls. And 8, nothing. 1, they run into something at noon. And at night, they run into nothing. So is this encounter them running into their lair? I'm going to say it's a 30% chance. 35%, because that's their chance of running into their lair. No. So they've run into something else. So is it the werewolves? We're going to give it a 50-50. If it's under 50% or under, it'll be the werewolves. And it is a 91. So they run into something different. Or something different runs into them, since they had to have found their home probably about noon before, and this was the noon encounter. They run into something right near their lair, or something comes upon their lair. Again, rolling the percentile and treating them as 2d10 on the Monster Manual chart, percentile on the Dungeon Master's chart. 89 or 17. The 89% is trolls. And the 17 on the Monster Manual chart would be aspis. And we've run into some nasty aspis before, but that is south of this location. So, again, I guess we'll go 50-50. We'll do the 2d10s again. The 10s die will be the aspis. The 1s die will be the trolls. And with a 5 to a 3, well, 5 to a 30, they run into trolls. So trolls are in their lair 40% of the time. 32%. So they've run into the trolls probably right before they ran into their own folks, or just after, perhaps while setting up patrols around their lair. And how many trolls do we have? 1d12. Let's see, where's my d12? It is over here. All right. 1. 1 troll in a lair by itself. I wonder if this was the lair of the other trolls that got destroyed previously in our little sessions here. So in terms of reaction, hobgoblins are, well, they hate trolls. And orcs hate trolls. And trolls hate hobgoblins and are antagonistic and have antipathy towards orcs. So that means on the encounter rolls, that is going to be a minus 10%. Oh, no, it's minus 15% for the hobgoblins and the orcs, a minus 15% for the troll toward the hobgoblins, a minus 10% towards the orcs. So let's just do, what is the orc reaction? The orc reaction is 59 minus 15. That's 49, so that is neutral. The hobgoblin result is, well, let's do the troll result. The troll result is 98 minus 15, which would be 83. Friendly immediate action. So let's see what the hobgoblins roll. This could be interesting. And they're going to roll A 92 minus 15 is going to be 77, which is also friendly immediate action. Wow. So I think they made a new friend. So now in addition to the hobgoblins and in their lair, we'll have to roll to see what the hobgoblins in the lair section look like. We have these orcs and we have a troll. So checking my notes here, the Iron Bashers they started off with 148. They had 106 after the battle. Hobgoblins are typically 20 to 200. So 148, they would have had maybe as many as 50 in the lair group section. So I'm just going to roll these D10s 5 times and see what we got. All right, we got 6 and 4, that's 10. 7 and 1, that's 18. And then another 7, that's 25. And that's times 10. Nope, I was rolling straight I could have got 50 straight. So 25. So 25 more hobgoblins in the lair that were waiting this big war band to return. Well, no, looking at my notes here, I must have already rolled this group up. It was 18 hobgoblins with a chief and 13 guards. So plus 270 females and 540 young. So, and 4 carnivorous apes. So that group is joined by the troll, and then they have the group of orcs that they have promised to escort back to their own lair, which by the map is about 2.5 days travel away. So will they succeed in somehow subjugating these orcs, getting them to move closer, or maybe they'll move closer themselves? Since they're near a lake, that might be enticing to bring the orcs to them because there's a plentiful supply of water. Of course, there's always danger because this is the area that the werewolves were in. And just about a day away is that group of gnolls that was with them. So in a depression with a ruined city in it. So a lot going on in this particular corner of the world, and we'll have to see how things shape up later. But in summing up their journey, getting it to a close, they've actually moved a day ahead of where we left off with our party, the Dragon Slayers. So we'll probably go back check in with them the next time. So I hope you enjoyed this sort of into the humanoid races post-battle, wandering around the landscape and lairing or being destroyed. The opening theme of this podcast was Strength of the Titans, and the closing music is Late Night Radio, both from Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. If you have any thoughts or feedback, you can get in touch with me by leaving me a voicemail on my Google Voice number, 864-209-1441. That's 864-209-1441. Or through SpeakPipe at www.speakpipe.com/Phantom Thoughts. That's www.speakpipe.com/Phantom Thoughts. Or you can send me a message or an audio file on Discord, where I can be found the Pink Phantom, or through email, phantomthoughtspodcast@gmail.com. That's phantomthoughtspodcast@gmail.com. I don't have to play or read your feedback on the podcast if that is not your preference. Just let me know.